Hey Ecofictologists, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lovis and today I am going to talk about the most recommended ecofiction titles, whether I've read them, and whether I agree with those recommendations. And when I say most recommended ecofiction titles, I mean the ones in articles, and when you Google ecofiction titles, what comes up? The titles that you supposedly must read. I have to admit that there were some surprises in here when I collated all of my data and started writing this episode. It didn't quite turn out the way I expected it to. But anyway, let's just get into it. So when I first started researching ecofiction as a genre, as most people I expect, I read a lot of articles about what ecofiction, climate fiction, cli-fi, environmental literature, solar punk, all the names of all the things, what the heck they were all about. And many of those articles will have recommendations in them, and it felt like the same titles were coming up again and again. And now, having read some of those titles, I might put together a different list of recommendations for people who are new to the genre. Some of those titles that I see come up often would not be the smooth, soft entry that I would recommend for newcomers. So when I came up with the idea of doing this as an episode, I thought I knew what I would find. I thought I would be able to predict the top 10, even top 20 books that get recommended over and over again. So I compiled the data from 20 different sources, all the articles that came up when I searched various variations of which ecofiction titles should I read, or which climate fiction titles should I read. And these were all lists that were giving me the top 10, top 20, must read, most crucial, best titles in the genre. And what I actually found was a list of almost 130 titles. Among 20 lists, there were 130 different titles that were mentioned. I have linked all of the lists down below so you can go and have a look, but it looks like nobody really agrees what the top 10 must-read, most crucial ecofiction titles are, which I have to admit I kind of like. However, there are a top 10 and a top 20 of the titles that came up more often, and so I figured I would share those with you anyway. At the top spot, rather unsurprisingly, is Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver. This is truly a gem. This had 9 mentions. I was actually surprised that it didn't have more. And then we have The Overstory by Richard Powers with 8. The American War by Omar El-Akkad with 7, and Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler also with 7. The Mad Adam Trilogy by Margaret Atwood got 6, and Gold Fame Citrus by Claire V. Adkins got 5. Clade by James Bradley also got 5. The Drowned World by J.G. Ballard and The Memory of Water by Emi Ataranta both got 4. If you've been counting, you know that I've only mentioned 9 titles, and that is because the rest of the titles in the top 20 all got 3 mentions. So because they were tied, I couldn't pick one to be the 10th place in the top 10. So just so you're not sitting here forever, I'll list them out down in the description below so you can go have a look. But there were a few notable mentions in there for me. The Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin is in there, along with several titles by Paolo Bacigalupi and Jeff VanderMeer, which should surprise no one. What did surprise me was that Kim Stanley Robinson was not in the top 20. He did have titles in the whole list of the 130, but he was not in the top 20, which really surprised me. And Amitav Ghosh is also not in the top 20. It just seems like I have very few conversations about ecofiction where Kim Stanley Robinson is not mentioned, and same with Amitav Ghosh. They just seem like big names, and they did not make it to more than 2 mentions for a key title. And of course, because I'm me, I did some stats. And it turns out that while I was aware of all top 10, like I've heard of them, they're on my TBR list, I've only read 70% of them. I'm missing the Mad Adam trilogy, which actually I've just realized is a total cheat because that's 3 books, but it only got 1 slot here. And I'm missing The Drowned World by J.G. Ballard. I know, how could I? And Memory of Water by Emilia Taranta, which I do own. And I've been dying to read it, but I don't know how I've not gotten to it in the last 2 years. No idea. And I am happy to report that I have at least heard of 95% of the top 20, with the exception of A Children's Bible by Lydia Millet. I hadn't heard of that one, but that one got 3 mentions, and actually I think my phone must be listening to me because now Instagram has shown me A Children's Bible by Lydia Millet at least 3 times since I wrote this episode. But I've only read 50% of the top 20. I need to work on that. Just seems like something I should be able to say that I have done, that I've read the most popular books in this genre that I profess to know so much about. It just seems like something I should do. So the next question I ask myself is whether I agree with these recommendations, with these most highly recommended titles within the ecofiction genre. Are these titles that I myself would suggest to people? And for this, I'll only look at the top 9, so everything that got more than 3 mentions, because I think I would lose friends very quickly if I immediately just gave out a list of 20 books. Now, of course, when I give recommendations, those recommendations are tailored to the person that I'm talking to. I wouldn't recommend the same books to everybody, because everybody has different tastes. But if I look at this as like a entry level or like an introduction to the genre, would I recommend these books as first reads if somebody was wanting to know more about the genre? Answer? Mixed bag. Very mixed bag. And I feel like I need to put a disclaimer here that these are all just my opinions. Don't get mad if I don't like a book that you really like. That's your prerogative, as it is mine. And anything that I say negative, it doesn't mean that that book is bad. It just means I didn't like it. Just feather the break a bit. Let's start with the ones I do agree with. Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver. If you've been around the channel for any time at all, this should not surprise you. I would highly recommend this book to almost everybody. It is glorious. I loved it. Clade by James Bradley, I also really, really liked, although I can see why some people wouldn't like it because it's told over such a long time span and like over generations of people. That doesn't mesh with everybody, but I really enjoyed it, so yes, I would recommend that one. Obviously, I can't speak to the Mad Adam trilogy or Drowned World or Memory of Water, but I have heard very good things about Memory of Water. Now, The Overstory by Richard Powers. Did I enjoy this book? Yes, I did. But I think every time I recommend it to someone, I have to put like a disclaimer or like a caveat there, because the first like half of the book is so slow. You've really got to hang on. You've got to hang on with your fingernails to be pulled along by this book, because there is so much setup that happens before the excitement starts. Have a look at the therapy session that I had with Forrest Brown, because I couldn't even fathom talking about this book on my own, and so I invited Forrest Brown, who does the podcast Stories for Earth, to come and talk about it with me, because, oh my gosh, there was so much to unpack. I did like it, and parts of it did resonate with me, and I thought the writing was really beautiful, but it is chonky, it is slow for the first half, and it is not subtle, so I don't know if I could convince a newcomer to the genre to really hang on for that. American War by Omar El-Akkad. I think this was one of the first book reviews I did, actually. It might have been the second one after Walk Away, potentially, or the other way around. I can't remember. It was so long ago. I did enjoy it. I thought it was really powerful, but boy is it a hard-hitting novel. Here especially is where I would say I would recommend this to people, but not as a first read for ecofiction, because I myself found it a very abrupt entrance into the genre, but I read it because it came up on all the bloody lists. But if I can give someone a smoother, less traumatic entrance, I probably would do, unless this was really down their alley of the type of literature that they enjoy, because I found it quite brutal. But that might just be my own reading tastes. Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Oh boy. I completely understand why this is in the top mentions, because it is a masterful piece of work. And I do recommend people who want to be familiar with the genre should read this book. But as a first read, are you kidding me? I know people who had to put this down for mental health reasons. It is probably the most violent book I've ever read. There is every type of violence. There are content warnings across the board for this book. And yes, you can find hope in there, but you gotta dig through a lot of trauma to get to the hope, which potentially was the message in there. Again, I needed a therapy session with Forrest Brown to talk about this, because I needed to unpack my own mental struggle with this book. I felt oh my gosh, this really took a toll on me. It's a dark book. It puts like a cloud over your day. It's a dark book. So yes, read it if you're comfortable with reading books with these content warnings, but I would never hand someone this book as a first read for ecofiction. There were things I really loved about it, but phew, it's heavy. And lastly, Gold Fame Citrus by Claire Faye Atkins. I hated this book. I know many others who really, really enjoyed it, but I very much disliked it. There are a few books that I genuinely hated, and this one made me need to take a shower. The writing is so evocative. It is so well written because it does produce a visceral response in me, and not all writing does that. So, and this is not a bad book. It's a good book. It's just not good for me. But the writing, the way that it affected me, it was too invasive. I don't know. It was too intimate and close, and yeah, I just felt sticky and icky, and I needed a shower. And there were a couple scenes in there with some red flags waving all over the place that I did not enjoy. I just really didn't like it. I'm sorry. I know I'm in the minority here. I think, and understandably, it is also a masterful piece of work. It's not up there for me. So I will never recommend Gold Fame Citrus to anyone. I'm sorry. But hey, I mean, because it's in the top 9, they'll get that recommendation from elsewhere anyway. So where are we at? It's probably 50-50 with whether I agree with these recommendations or not, which is not too bad. If you want to know my top 10, my favorite ecofiction titles that I read, I made a video last year listing them all, and I'll link that up here as well as down in the description. Not a lot has changed since I made that list. Last year was a really good reading year. I think the only addition was Limbo is now in the top 10, and you can find out why in my April April reading wrap-up. If you think your tastes align with mine, then these titles will probably serve you very well. And that's it. That's all I have for you today. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of the top 10, top 20, if you recognize those titles, if you would agree with those recommendations, or very much not. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post every Wednesday all about reading and writing ecofiction and how it can be used as a science communication tool. If you like what I do and would like to support me, then head on over to patreon.com/Ecofictology and become a patron, where your monthly donations buy me books, as well as support Love the Oceans, a marine conservation organization operating out of Mozambique. If you're looking for a little bit of community around your ecofiction, then join us on Rewelding Our Stories Discord server. Everyone is welcome. We have people looking at ecofiction from all kinds of different angles, and it makes for some really great conversations. So come and join us. Invite link is in the description below. And that's all from me. So happy reading, and I'll see you next week, Ecofictologists.